Good afternoon. It's a little bit earlier than normal, but it is 5 o'clock on Tuesday, July 21st. We have our quarterly workshop today, and it's talking about many important projects we're working on. So we will call this workshop meeting to order. All of council is in attendance. Ms. Chapman, are there any public comments?
No public comments.
There are no public comments, so public comments are closed. And let's jump right into the workshop items. First is Buck Island and Simmonsville Road lighting plan and sidewalk plan. Whoever is up. Brian, are you it?
Yes, ma'am.
Here you go. Hi.
Hey, how are y'all? Good evening. So we have about 5 different projects to update you on tonight. The first of which is the Buck Island Simmonsville neighborhood lighting and sidewalk plan. Just a quick background on this. It's been our practice in the past to come in behind the sanitary sewer installation on Buck Island and Simmonsville Road and install the sidewalks and lighting after the sanitary sewer has been installed. So to date, we've constructed about 7,500 linear feet of sidewalk and about 39 different lights along Buck Island and Simmonsville roads. Currently, we're under construction with phase 5 on Buck Island Road. It's on the curve as you turn left off of Simmonsville, or I guess Buck Island Simmonsville when it splits. And so phase 5 is that curved part of the road. The final 2 phases of the sidewalks are for Simmonsville Road are under design and permitting as we speak. This is just a quick map. I don't know if you can see my arrow or my pointer or not. Again, this green section is under construction right now. The last remaining section will be this part of Simmonsville. Everything in orange has been complete, and obviously Bluffton Parkway, that's the county. They have a pathway along that road. You can see the interconnectivity that we have between Buck Island Road and Simmonsville Road. And there's a little bit of a coloration here. That's just because of the overlay with the text. So to get into the lighting, I think this is the part that we want to discuss the most tonight, unless you all really have a sidewalk question. But to talk about the lighting, the project area is served by 2 different electrical service providers, Palmetto Electric and Dominion Power or Dominion Energy. In the past, we've had some neighborhood meetings where some citizens have expressed concern over the low intensity of the lighting and the odd spacing of poles, creating an inconsistent look in the neighborhood. Like I said, in the past, we've gone in on existing power poles to install lighting instead of adding additional poles. Also, the 2 different service providers have 2 different types of lights, and we'll get to that in a second, but each one has their own restrictions, I guess, and positives or negatives, if you want to look at it. So they don't really match, and we'll get into that here in a second. Again, in the past, we've installed lines on main transmission poles. They've generally been spaced greater than 200 feet apart. Like I said, creating some inconsistent light coverage. For the most recent portion of sidewalk that we installed from Parker's to Graco, the transmission lines were actually on the west side of the road. So we did install some additional service poles on the east side of the road in order to accommodate those lights over the sidewalk. Again, in the future phases, we're going to have to do a mixture of adding poles and using the existing poles. So right here is a quick map. This is in our asset management software program, Cartograph. We have mapped all of our lights. You can see we have 39 lights along Buck Island and Simmonsville roads, predominantly on Buck Island Road. And it doesn't really show down in here, but we have quite a bit of lighting in the historic district area. So this is where we need to fill in right through here. So here's where we get to the different light fixture options. Currently, you can see the yard light with the hood is generally what we've used in the neighborhood. They have, this is Palmetto Electric, they have multiple streetscape style lightings. floodlights, that's definitely not what we want to use, but these are the different types that we can pick from Palmetto Electric. This is Dominion. Again, they have various street style lights. This is generally what we use along May River Road, the Shepherd's Crook. This light down here is what we use along Goethe and Schultz roads. So tonight, we just wanted to kind of get your all's opinion, get some feedback from you about 4 different things. Mainly is light coverage. Do we want the lighting to predominantly be over the sidewalk, or do we want to add more lights and include the roadways? If we do that, you'll see here in the bullet point, we'll be required to meet SCDOT requirements, and that basically means more coverage, more light fixtures, more poles. They'll really add a lot of light to the neighborhood, but maybe will be a negative. I'm not sure if the residents would actually want that or not. The other thing is fixture types. What do we want to have? Do we want to be consistent as much as possible between the 2 service providers, or do we want a different look than what's out there now? Do we want more of a streetscape style light? And with each one of those comes a different cost range, and how do we buy those lights and pay for those? Again, SCDOT, right now we don't illuminate the roadway. If we do start lighting up the road, we'll have to follow SCDOT lighting standards. We'll have to add lights, add poles, which will be probably more easements and more cost to install those lights. And then there's I'll say the wattage or the intensity or even the color of the lighting themselves. Each fixture provides a little different look. If you'll recall what we did on Goethe Schultz neighborhood, we actually installed a kind of a pilot project, and we had that out there for about a month, where we all got to go out there and take a look at it at night and see what they look like and decide from there what we wanted to go to. And so that's kind of what we're asking tonight is, how do you want us to proceed? Would you like us to do a kind of a demonstration project? Is there a specific light based on what I just showed you? I can go back to those here in a second, that you like the look of, that you want us to pursue. Do we need to, I guess, increase the intensity or the wattage of those lights in order to provide more coverage? And again, possibly going out into the DOT roads. These are the kind of items that we want to discuss here tonight. And I know I go through these things really fast, but I'm happy to go back and show you some more slides or go back to those fixtures, whatever you might want to see.
Could you do maybe I don't know if you can do a split screen of the fixtures. Could you show us on the road what's Dominion and what's Palmetto Electric? And while you're doing that, I'll see if there are questions from council or comments. Anybody?
I have some questions.
Fred?
Go ahead, Brian, if you want.
No, unfortunately, I don't have it split up. Basically, I believe the northern part of the neighborhood would be Palmetto Electric. I hope I'm not messing this up. I'm pretty sure the northern part closer to Bluffton Parkway is Palmetto Electric, and the southern part is Dominion. But unfortunately, I don't have that shown on a map. I don't have that split. We tried. It was very cumbersome to get this in the presentation.
Sorry. Okay.
Okay. When are we looking to do this? Is the funding already in place, and how much revenue? What is the cost based on 2 or 3 different scenarios? Do we have that yet?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay. Is it in when is it budget to do this project?
So I believe I don't have the budget in front of me in my little odd setup I have here, but I believe we have this budgeted through the next 2 years, following through the construction of the sidewalk on Simmonsville Road. And then if we were going to expand the program, obviously we would budget for that based on the input we get tonight, and then probably in future workshops.
Okay, and I'm following you correctly. We're not probably going to put these lights in for another 2 years?
No, I'm saying the projects follow through the next 2 years. So as we build the sidewalks, we'll come in and infill with the lighting. But if we were going to expand this program and add more lights, then that's something we have to identify and budget for in future years. or add to like next year or the following year.
So my question is, how can we make an educated opinion if we don't know what its cost is going to be? That's one question. The other question, the type of lighting is not important to me. What's important to me is the coverage and safety, and that means coverage would give safety would be the first concern, is because walking or riding a bike at night and feeling comfortable that you have enough lighting between each light is important. So that if you can help me understand which lighting would help us, that we wouldn't have to spend astronomical amount of money to get the coverage. Aesthetic wouldn't be the first thing that I think would be something I would like to acquire. I think making sure we have enough light that gives one the comfort that they could walk at any point and not feel threatened in any way. I've had family members that lost their lives on those roads. So I know having enough lighting is important. So but I don't know how we can make a decision tonight. Do we follow this up with another meeting or something? Because
Yeah.
if we just say we like the light with the hood, but we don't know how that light will project, it doesn't help me at all.
Right.
But if I can jump in, I think we all give him our thoughts, and he may have to come back to us when we vote on it with maybe 1, 2, or 3 options, because he's not going to run forward with this tonight because we're not voting on a budget or anything. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am. So if you all kind of give me a direction of either you don't care what it looks like, or you just want me to proceed and try to provide the most lighting, we can then go back to the providers and say, this is the type we want. We want this type of light. And then they can run the photometric plans for that situation. And then we can see how it lights up along those sidewalks. But otherwise, each one of these produces a different amount of light intensity or the projection. You know, if it's the yard light with the hood, it's going to go more straight down, cast straight down. A floodlight would, I don't think anybody would want that in their front yard, but a floodlight would flood out and really light up the road. So we just got to pick what we want these guys to run a photometric plan for.
Ryan, is there a reason why? What's the?
It's hard to hear you at the beginning. I don't know what happened.
Okay, is it still hard to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I was gonna say, what's the take on mimicking the same layout in terms of spacing and the light that was used in the Old Town or the May River Road design in accordance to Simmonsville and Buck Island? Because I understand what residents are saying in terms of that spacing is spotty and that the lighting isn't really bright. Like there was a resident last week who fell off of their bike riding from the Enlargement back onto Simmonsville because they weren't able to see a portion of the sidewalk because it's really dark in some places where there is no light.
Yeah, again, so that would be here, the Shepherd's Crook that's provided by Dominion Energy. If you go to the western end of the May River Road streetscape, we have the smaller version of those poles that are just over the sidewalk. Whereas the rest of the roadway, they're taller and they project out onto the road. And that's why we have such tight spacing along May River Road, because we had to meet those DOT requirements. If this is something that council wants me to look at, that's why I'm asking you all tonight, what would you like me to do? If this is something that we need to go to Dominion and get a photometric plan and figure out how many of these we need to install, then that's the path we'll move forward.
Exactly. So the scale of that would based off of the DOT requirements is what you're saying? for the
Yes,
next-
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Dan?
Can I jump in?
Yeah,
I think one of the questions to be answered in the beginning here is, are we trying to provide sidewalk lighting, which is different than roadway lighting and sidewalk lighting? What is our main goal? Are we trying to encourage people to stay off the street and onto the sidewalk and make the sidewalk safe? Is that the goal?
I think I heard Bridget that I was actually going to ask Fred, did he want the lighting to light the roadway as well? Because that might, my thought is it might start inhibiting people's houses. Or do you want to light the sidewalk better? And that's the comment I've heard from residents there for the last 6-9 months. So Fred, what were you thinking?
My thought was, well, first of all, and I should know this, but I'm gonna ask anyway to make sure that I'm aware. Do we have sidewalks that covers the entire roadway? Will this project, the sidewalk project now, take care of all the entire corridor for those streets?
His
go
last,
back.
his first map showed it, that it finishes it.
They finish it?
See?
So the green is proposed. So once we finish these green sidewalks right through here, we have completed the sidewalk network.
Okay, good. Then I think we should encourage them to be on the sidewalks, because that's how my family members got killed. They wasn't on sidewalks.
I'll jump in a question. I know Larry hasn't spoken either. I was at several of the BIS talks and this subject came up, and I actually rode out to Godey Road. The majority of that group liked the lighting on Godey Road. And I think the problem with Buck Island Simmonsville is we installed those lights on existing poles and they were too high. They just spread to nowhere. So how do we treat these two roads just like we'd treat any other walkable area in our town and give the residents comfort, security, but also a pretty night to walk, not just under a big floodlight. So that private light on Godey Road, I heard a lot of positive comments about. It's going to look weird to use the Shepherd's Crook if we can't get Palmetto Electric to find one like that as well. So that's my thought. Let's make it inviting. And Bridget, you were there. Fred, Dan was there. Did you hear that as well?
Right. That was their concern, is just the fact that for safety reasons, anyone wanting to walk or bike at night, that even people walking, from a relative's house or next, that the lighting currently doesn't support that, because it does get very dark. And they did enjoy or like the Godey design there. Options, again, I see the Dominion one that's up for Palmetto. If we're picking and choosing some from Dominion and Palmetto Electric.
Yes, so this would be the Dominion. This was the light used by Dominion on the Schultz Road. And then this is what we've used to date on Buck Island and Simmonsville Road. It's just that they just have different types, that's all. And I don't think really the aesthetic of the look of the fixture is that important. But if y'all say that's okay, go with those, then we can work with those providers to create photometric plans to fill in spots that aren't illuminated, and whether that's putting in poles, trying to find different avenues to, maybe there's some transmission lines that don't have lights on it. I'm not sure, but we can work with them knowing that this is the light fixture and this is the type that we want to go with.
But you said the ones that are currently there have their low intensity, right? That they don't illuminate as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact either wattage or type of bulb that it uses. But again, we could work with them for that to make sure there's consistency. But I'm sure there's going to be just a little bit of difference between the two. But at least we have a path forward and can try to fill in those areas.
Brian,
Y'all, let me see if Larry maybe hadn't chimed in. Larry, did you have
Yeah.
any thoughts on this?
Yeah, if I may, Brian, I would think that you would we need to find how bright we want it. You know, how much illumination do you want on the sidewalk in all areas? Naturally, some will be a little dimmer than others in between the poles, but it would seem easy enough to say, okay, if we find something that we like, say, okay, this is what we want this sidewalk to look like in the middle of the night when there's no moon. Then the power companies should come in and say, okay, well, you need 227 of these or 42 of these. And, you know, that's the way I would think that it would be done.
Right. So we know what we did on Goethe and Schultz roads. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think they were, I don't know if they were high pressure sodium or what, I can't remember, or metal halide, but whatever it was, I think everybody was pretty happy with the look of that. So if that's kind of the direction you all say, yeah, we like the look of that, that intensity is good, the light color is good. You know, sometimes with the LED, it can become too bright, too white. I don't think a lot of people will like that. They like that warmer yellow look, but we could go to them and say, okay, this is what we want. This is the kind of the look we're shooting for, and then work with them to get that.
Right.
Hey, Brian,
Yes, sir.
everything Larry, you're correct. If you're focused on the sidewalk, they can easily come up with the wattages and the uniformity and the number of lights. They can do that with a drawing. I will say, and I don't speak for the residents, in my profession, when I was doing this, what I found by far was the majority of people like the metal halide versus the sodium light. That was just my understanding. I sold thousands of those lights and put them in, and by far that was the light. Now it's a wider, cleaner light. And some of these lights can immediately be taken off this list. I mean, a lot of them wouldn't be functional. Floodlights or the street light, since we're not trying to do street lighting. And the Baltimore and the traditional light, both, Palmetto's got the Baltimore and Dominion's got the traditional, and those are somewhat similar in nature. You know, we could look at that also, or we could look at, you know, some others, but some of these aren't functional for sidewalk lighting.
Well, why don't we get him to look at the two similar, I know he has Palmetto Electric up here, the Baltimore and the Dominion comparable, and look at the Goethe Road one and a comparable one. I want to throw out a very big concern by that community. And we were going to ride with him because I think Pat Rooney was going to ride with some residents, but then we knew we were going to be doing this. Those lights right now on Buck Island, Simmonsville are too high up on the pole. So don't use poles and put them all that same height. We're still going to get, they just look like street lights that you put up in a backyard somewhere. I mean, try to bring those down. If we were able to put them on the pole, surely they'd let us bring them down. If not, replace them with something that could be lower to the ground. Those are my thoughts on this.
Okay. And I believe Pat did drive with Miss Sharon Brown. I believe they did go through and take a look at the neighborhood.
I would say also, and I agree, Lisa, the lights that you just pointed out were as much for street lighting as they were anything. But I think we should take a look at maybe a 20-foot height or 15 or 16, but I wouldn't go lower than that, because then you end up, the light source is so close to the sidewalk, you have to put a whole lot more lighting in than's necessary. One other thing, Brian, Palmetto used to have a light called a Pima. I didn't see that on here. Did they not have that any longer?
I'll have to look. I don't know.
The reason I asked the question, I know it's not the same as the shepherd hook, but it had a swan neck or something, I think. I was just curious if it looked anything similar at all, if we had to go from one jurisdiction to the other.
We can look into that.
can I ask another question?
Mhm.
I'm still concerned that if we pick lighting that's going to be expensive, that the project, it delays the project. If it's because we got to find the money for it. So how do we know how much money is going to be allocated for these lighting? Because I don't want us to just go and pick a light and then it's 2 or 3 years out before we can get the funds to do the project.
Well, Brian, why don't you put all that in for us to look at when you bring it back? And I got from you, it just additional lights might be in additional phases, but we would start with what we have budgeted.
Right, yeah,
That's-
we'll definitely
that's my
infill with what we have
concern.
budgeted, but if I could run with this and give you two different scenarios. Obviously, if we went with brand new lights, like the Baltimore and the traditional, and installed more of a, I don't know if that's the look you all want, but if we went with that, then you're looking at all new light fixtures, and which would be much more expensive. If we go with the kind of the hood style, the yard light with the hood and the Cobra head, and we can just put in some poles, that's going to be a lot cheaper than having brand new fixtures and brand new lights installed. But I don't know until I run a photometric plan and we say, okay, we need X many lights, because once I can get that done, then I can come back to you with the cost.
Okay, that's important to me. Just for me, that's important because we see what phases does. It took us maybe 10 or so years to do phases of sewage, and so phases scare me.
Well, and Fred, next budget, we need to keep this on the front burner, that maybe this is where we tell Mark to put more money, in that year to start collecting. I mean, that's my thought, but I want it to be pretty. I don't like hearing residents tell me they feel like they're an afterthought sometime. And it's not just this road, but if we put the money and energy in Bluffton, we should love all of Bluffton streets. And I worry about the Baltimore a little, because I just know growing up, those lights were in my town, and of course it was a different town, but it seems like people like to break glass out of lights like that. So maybe some kind of pretty hood up. I do want to know that we can lower what we have now, because that was absolutely the #1 concern currently.
I would also like to ask Brian another question. Brian, I love the idea you mentioned of when you guys were doing the Gothi Road lighting project, of the pilot program you did with the 2 fixtures, or the 1 fixture you chose. What's the time frame from when we select, let's say, the 2 or 3 that we like, that you could set that pilot option up for us to actually be able to see and make a selection on those?
I would say it's probably pretty quick. I could probably do it within a month, but it depends on the availability. And I don't know what those light availabilities are, but I would imagine if these are their standard options, then we should be able to get those installed pretty quickly.
Anything else? Do you have direction, Brian? Oh, I understand. Yep.
You're right. I had to remember after you said that. They do like to break glass.
Yeah. Any other thoughts for Brian? Do you have what you need?
Yes, ma'am, I believe so.
Anything else for Brian on this item? Okay. Are you all of these, Brian?
I am.
Okay, we'll move on to B, Oyster Factory Park Master Plan update.
All right. Are y'all able to see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Oyster Factory Park Master Plan update. Just a real quick background on how we got here. In 2015, the Oyster Factory Park Master Plan was adopted by Town Council. It was a kind of a higher level master plan that showed some improvements to the parking areas, facility improvements, pathway improvements, and then improvements to the water side of the park. If you all recall possibly seeing this several years ago, It was, like I said, high level, but it showed the trailer, improved parking up here, improved parking on the northeast corner of the parcel. It showed the Garvey house, improvements to the pavilion area. Again, it was pretty high level stuff. They showed a kids play area, but didn't really get into the details of it. It calls for, I think, a bandstand, showed improvements to the Oyster Factory.
Brian, are you showing us a map right now? All I see is the heading.
Me too.
Oh, I'm trying. Here, let me go to the next. Can you see this?
I only see slide 1.
Brian, your screen is frozen. You might have to stop sharing and then share again.
Okay.
Sometimes it freezes. There we go.
You see that?
We're on, yes, now we see a map.
Okay. Here's kind of a enlargement of that same map, but this is what we've used to construct the improvements to date. So like I said, to date, we did the Garvey house preservation and restoration. We constructed the courtesy dock, expanded the boat trailer and the parking areas west of Wharf Street. We expanded the boat launch and boat ramp area. We did some hardscape and drainage improvements this past fall, I believe, or last summer. We constructed the overflow parking lot along Bridge Street, and we've done some sidewalk and pathway and landscape improvements, such as the butterfly garden that's on the corner there as you go down the hill towards the water. So we contracted with Whitmer Jones Kiefer to kind of take a look at that master plan and give us an update. What are some items that we could do to mainly, I'm going to point down here to this southeastern corner, and I'm going to zoom in here. And things that we're looking at are bandstand, playground area, a treehouse area, improvements to the area around the fire pit, maybe putting in some split level, I'll say, decking areas in order to provide better seating and gathering areas, expanding the deck outside of the pavilion and connecting into the restroom. I'm sure you all seen it lately. The surface in that area is pretty much dirt. There's been a lot of erosion over the years. So we want to put in some kind of surface that would hold up more to the drainage that's coming off of that, probably put in some more drainage improvements, add some picnic tables, and then also create a service drive to where we could come in and access the park from this corner for either food trucks or just maintenance perspective. Again, things that we're looking at or that I would like to discuss with you all tonight is the playground area. We've discussed a tree house, some type of crab trap, if you see down in this bottom left corner, some kind of playground that would tie into the May River or the Oyster Factory, you know, the type of work that's going on there. Again, synthetic turf north of the pavilion, expanding some decking between the pavilion and the restrooms, creating a bandstand type structure for concerts or events down there, updating the surface throughout the cookout area, and then expanding some walkways and just areas for events to take place. I'm happy to zoom in here. I can't zoom in much further than this, but perhaps this is the best exhibit to show you all. Happy to discuss, happy to get your input. I know it's a lot to take in, but I don't know how to present these to you, you know, piece by piece. And so happy to answer any questions or thoughts.
Maybe give Brian your thoughts on this. Anybody want to jump first? And I love that baby Larry.
Yeah, I'll comment, Lisa.
Bridget?
I love the layout of this in terms of functionality from an event perspective. I know where the proposed bands stand area is. Currently, where bands set up right now, out not that gazebo area, but the area closest to the Oyster Factory part. or the Oyster Factory building. If better like power and wattage could be placed there, because I know currently where it is now, when bands go to set up at the same time, like a truck or a vendor would plug in, I know it trips a lot. And being able to have that would, prevent people from having to run generators where they're not outperforming each other or louder than the band itself. So I think putting something like that in there would make it way better. And I'm not sure what the material would be considered on the ground area. It is a lot of dirt there. So I know that's become problematic too. Like if it rains and people are out there for events, like that dirt, kind of ruins, the vendor spaces and people's shoes and things like that. I know what's on the other side, I think is, I don't know if that's oyster shells or gravel or whatever, something like that would, I think, be aesthetically a little bit better, and it'd be better in the area as people are there for events and stuff.
Great.
You're saying move the bandstand from the southeast over to this corner, the southwest corner? You think that'd be better over there?
No, I'm saying currently where the band in the park now, like where that gazebo area is, people I've seen from events, they more so like will set up for a drink station or beverage station, or maybe they'll have a table set up. But the area that bands usually set themselves up at is that corner that is right where the Oyster Factory is. So it's set up on that side.
Okay.
And I would just say that area where the power sources currently are, the power sources aren't powerful enough to be able to handle the bands that typically will set up there, and additional vendors. Like it trips often over there.
Okay.
And that's something to make a note of, Brian. The what do we need in terms of electricity?
Power
So-
upgrades.
Yeah, how the power operates.
Okay.
Larry, you and Bridget both do the most things here. So comments on this? You're muted.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I agree with what Bridget was saying as far as the power situation, especially if you have a food truck or something like that that demands, service. I don't think that's a big thing. It would have to be an overhead, I would think, with all the tree roots and stuff. I don't think it would be possible to put power in more locations, through all the, the old tree roots. I think that's why we only have what we have now. But that could be looked at and possible a couple of poles or something, to put another 100 amp service or so in several places instead of everything running off the one that's there now.
Okay.
Any other comments on the look, what they should focus on, your thoughts?
I got a question.
Yep.
Is the county, the part that we have as of in the master plan, does the county have any say in this?
I'm not sure about that, to be honest with you. We could share it with them. I'm not sure how the original master plan was. I wasn't here at that time, so I don't know. But obviously we can share this with them to get their input.
I thought rural and critical lands and the county had to agree.
Yeah, I can help answer that, Mayor and Council and Brian. Yes, the county, because of the arrangement of the property where we own a portion of it and the county owns a portion of that whole site down there, through our operating agreement, we have worked with the county on the original, or I would say the overall master plan. I would say that along with the rural and critical lands and the open land trust conservation work, we simply just need to give them an update. We can't deviate from really what's going on there. And really what we're doing here is simply improving current use. We're not deviating from the plan. It still has pavilion, park, Garvin House, boat launch, different things like that. So I don't think anything we're talking about tonight is a deviation from the original plan. It wouldn't surprise them. However, before we move forward, upon your concurrence, we will definitely, and I will definitely work with Ashley Jacobs to make sure that the county and the rural and critical is very aware of the town's plans.
I would appreciate that. And now that brings me to the key question. If we didn't talk to them about it, that means we didn't ask them to share in the cost. Right?
Well, we wouldn't talk to them about refining the master plan, but I have talked with the county about the overall master plan and have made requests about cost sharing in the past. Absolutely.
Any other comments? I've got a few, but I'll let everyone else go first. Dan has made any. Larry, let's see if Dan has any. Do you have any comments? And then Larry, you can jump in.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I know Bridget's correct about the power needs over there where they normally set up. I mean, we've had trip breakers there. They can fix that. Like Larry said, on the corner up there, they could actually drop a pole in on the corner and do something there. The bathrooms, was there any modifications planned for the bathroom for the female side, or we're good with what we got?
Have you been in the female side?
I asked
with our side?
because of the lines there sometimes.
We always have lines. We just used your side, always.
The other question on the little roadway, access roadway, Brian, that you spoke about, is that the same path where people pull up now to back a trailer in?
I believe so. It's down here in this southeast corner.
Right. Okay, so that's an access, so they would have to leave that open for the boaters, right?
So the boat, if you look at the way this is oriented right now, the boat launch is up at the top left of the screen.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we try to formalize that drive a little bit more so it's not so, I guess, haphazard as it is now. That was the intent with this. So yeah, so it would have to stay open a little bit, but we could put a gate there, similar to how we have a gate. Kind of, we see where it has the tabby concrete midway. That's
right.
Some people come in there now. So I think the intent was to have them come in around this side instead of coming in through the middle of the park.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's all good. I'm not against that. I just want to be sure that we just make sure that people that are using that know that they can't just stop a car somewhere where the boat trailers actually pull up to back in. But I will say, I love this design. I think it's just absolutely wonderful. I'm so impressed with it. I don't even know how to tell you.
To answer your question about the restroom, I think for now, all we've looked at is more of like site horizontal improvements. We haven't looked at the facility. At this point, it was just more of a master plan of the site improvements. But if there's a need for that, I'm sure we could look at it in the future.
I'll defer to Bridget on that.
I have another question, and Larry might can help me with this one as well. I'll take his input. It looked like we're attracting more traffic. Look like we're going to be attracting more traffic when we make this thing this wonderful. But I don't see how we're going to handle the extra traffic when we do this, because it's when it's a great outside of pandemic summer day, it's overwhelming right now.
Are you talking about with the added playground, Fred?
Well, playground and the when you do this pavilion and all the other stuff that just make people feel like that's where I want to be. It's gonna, and it's also Larry, I'm also concerned about how all that's going to affect your daily operation on there.
Yeah, I agree. this map that we're looking at now is this is much better and clear. We just changed something here, right, Brian?
Yeah, so this is more of an overview of the entire park. One thing, I guess I glossed over it pretty quick, but we had looked at, could we fit more parking in this area north of the playground area, adjacent to the existing parking area at the corner of Bridge and Wharf. And something I glossed over that pretty quick, but we did look at adding additional parking. To Councilman Hamilton's point, I'm still not sure that would be enough. This is a popular spot for,
Right. Well,
you know,
in fact, one thing I think we have to be thinking about, and I love kids, you know that, and I'm all about anything we can do to make their life more fun and better for their parents. I'm not sure the mixture of the playground where it's pictured on here and the other functions and that go on in this park, you know, say it's a birthday party or a wedding or whatever. This is the first time I've ever seen one with an actual playground. We have to kind of think about the hypothetical situations that we're going to come if someone rents a park for a wedding or something like that, and then parents are bringing their kids there, and they're, you know, there's going to be alcohol, there's going to be music. You know, that's, I could see those two possibly clashing. That's just, I'm not saying I'm against it, but I think we ought to, everybody's got to look at that and, you know, give some feedback. You know, I mean, I just don't want to do something that's going to create havoc or make people mad.
Wouldn't it be closed off as it is now if someone is renting that space for a private event that you aren't able to access that at all?
You're asking me that, or what
No,
did
I'm
you
saying, like, what's the intent behind the playground and where it's spaced at? It's still the Oyster Factory Park. So would the public not be able to access that if someone has it rented out for the day for a private event? Would it not still be closed off, Brian?
I guess that would depend on how you all want to address the rules for the park once it's improved. I don't know how to answer that for you.
Well, can I jump in with a couple of thoughts since we've gone through everyone? I agree with the idea of you having a party and that treehouse has a lot of kids and you're going to have complaint. I think it's the wrong place for the playground. If we wanted a playground there, I would actually look to the west side somewhere. I'd hope we keep cars from driving over all of this upgrade, because I think that's why there's so much dirt. There are always cars that come in there when they're setting up parties. So I think our back alley way is a must. You just have to figure out how these cars can back up, or if there's a turnaround spot, because once they get up there, are they gonna have to back up to get out? That's just a comment. Mm-hmm. And I love I'm like Dan, I love everything about the deck area connecting restrooms. I love the deck area with the seat and walls. I just don't want to take away too much. And I guess it's still a lot of walkable area because I saw your chairs and tables. Location of things, I don't know. I think Larry and Bridget know best about bandstands and all that. But I hope this eliminates cars going on what we spend a lot of money repairing.
Where are you talking about?
Well, I'm talking about the playground. I think the playground's I don't think the playground fits there. If you have a party or a wedding, that playground's not going to be separated from the rest of the area unless we put a fence up in between it, and it's going to be open to the public. So is that the right place for it? The other thing I said, you know, with all the decking and all, I think that eliminates the trucks coming in the Wharf Street side, because we're going to force them to come down this side closest to the river. But is that as far as they go, and then how do they get out? So
yeah, that's a great comment. We'll definitely have to take a look at that one. And if I could just address the playground, the reason we put it there is that's where it was shown on the existing master plan, the original master plan. So we just followed up with that without changing the intent of the master plan, like Mark talked about. The intent of this one is the same as that original one. It's just we've refined it and enhanced it a little bit. But if you don't think that's the good spot for it now, based on the usage that we've seen over the past 5 years, then we can totally look at another spot for that.
I would definitely like to keep some type of playground there, like Lisa said, even if it has to be moved. I think all of our event spaces, though, currently would have that same issue, like where the Martin Family Park is now, and that the green space that's there, that's projected for events. You still have Du Bois Park that would be there in the event that a party's going on and someone wanted to be in that space on the playground, or even at Oscar Frazier Park, the Rotary Center and Field of Dreams, you still have that playground that the public uses and accesses, you know, in the, if there's an event going on. So I think placement might be something in terms of if it's going to be moved, should be considered. But I think to keep something out there would be good, because currently when people have events, I know they run into having to place a bouncy house over at the on the Garvin space in that lawn area, and I don't think that's something that we want that space to be utilized for, if they can have something accommodating on the east side.
Well, great.
So
point.
Brian, bring up the previous drawing.
Yeah, that's
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
that one?
The other one, right? Yeah, right there. So let me be clear what I'm hearing from Lisa and Bridget. And I hear what you're saying. It makes sense to me to move the playground when I listen to you. Are we saying move the playground over to where it says active lawn north of there on this drawing to the other side of the road?
Shade
active.
lawn?
Where are you
Shade
seeing that?
lawn? I don't see active lawn.
I
Shade
see
lawn
shade lawn, which would
Oh,
be
Right
the,
there.
right here, in between all the trees.
Are you talking back in here?
that
No,
would be,
man,
yeah. I don't know.
Maybe anywhere over there. I don't know. I mean, it's not. I think it's beautiful. I mean, I think what you've done is amazing.
But I do think it makes sense to move the playground. I do, after y'all brought it up.
Any other thoughts on this? What do you want from us, Brian? Just this, or
I think I need to talk to Mark. Probably
and
go-
can I ask? And another thing quickly, I think you need to make sure we can add parking in a space that we bought as open space, because I'm pretty sure that old contract when we bought all this was very clear on additional parking. So do check on that.
Yeah. So I'm looking here again. I'm just going off of the original master plan. There was parking shown as a potential parking expansion.
Pre
But
that.
again, we were trying to keep in that same vein.
But pre that, Brian, in the contract on it, we put it on there, but I think we were asking for forgiveness rather than
Okay.
permission.
Okay.
I would just check on that. So Mark, I mean, do y'all need to talk before you bring this back to us?
Yes, I think we've received exactly what we need to hear from you tonight. You know, definitely a good catch to think about the extra parking, although I think the covenants are fine with that. I will quadruple check. Think about relocating the playground, the separation between private party and access to the treehouse and playground, and the drive aisle for the service area. We'll make some modifications to the master plan, and keep in mind in the capital project program this year, there's very little dollars, if any, for construction on this property. The goal this year is to simply get the design completely finalized so that next fiscal year, there are some monies for A-tax or H-tax, we can move forward. So we can bring this back to you in October or a workshop even after that, just to stay on track to really get the design finalized this fiscal year. Please know I'll work with Beaufort County on the design, and what I've always done is ask them to participate with funding. They, as a comparison, they helped us buy Wright family property with rural and critical money, similar to down here. We partnered with them. But then Beaufort County also put A-tax or H-tax into the Wright family property for the construction. So I promise and assure you all that I will ask those same questions for this park as well. So
Mark,
Mayor,
if I can,
one last question, please.
Yes.
Mark,
yes, sir.
Brian, the new parking area that was brought up and just got discussed, is that for cars only?
Yeah, as it's sketched out and designed there, yes, sir.
Then I think that's what I would prefer. I can't speak for the others, but I think that we need that to accommodate the park.
Agreed. Okay, thank you.
Mark, could I say one more thing, Mayor? Just
Real quick.
as we move forward, Mark, I think it's very important to make sure that the pavilion, you can get close enough with equipment, you know, whether it's cooking equipment, a food truck or whatever. We don't want it so that you have to carry everything 300 feet, you know, from a road to be able to, you know, because there's tons of stuff when a function goes on, and we need to have access to the pavilion area and all the other areas actually to set up. So
Okay. Well, I've got some ideas. Maybe we flip the service yard and put it where the treehouse and playground is and find a new home for the treehouse and playground, and it opens up that way.
We'll
some
look
ideas.
for we'll look for y'all's changes. I think y'all have our comments. Right? Good?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am,
ma'am.
we've got a lot.
Okay. Moving on to Calhoun Street, Streetscape Master Plan update.
All right, let me know if it doesn't work this time as we go through this.
It's working.
Okay. So a quick background on this, and we're kind of jumping, I didn't go all the way back to the very beginning, but you know, Calhoun Street's been identified in the Old Town Master Plan, and it's kind of like the heart, I would say, of the historic district, in my opinion. But there was a Calhoun Street and adjacent study that was adopted in 2016. And some of the recommendations from that we've implemented to date, we've added parking limits and no parking areas along Calhoun Street. We have the parking agreement with Cornerstone Church that allows for more parking in that vicinity. We've installed bollards along Calhoun Street and also some neighboring roads. We've restriped the parking stalls along Calhoun Street. We've completed streetscape improvements to Dr. Mellichamp Drive and May River Road. We added the public lot at 184 Bluffton Road. We've completed Martin Family Park and the accompanying parking in that area. We've added street lighting along adjacent streets such as Lawrence and Boundary and Bluffton Road. And we've done we just talked about the Oyster Factory Park expansion and the Garvin House restoration. So right now, some of the items that the study recommended that we have in progress, we are constructing the Wright Family Park. We're in construction with the Calhoun Street dock, which if you haven't seen it, it's pretty awesome. I recommend go and take a look at it. Bridge Street Streetscape Phase 1 is design underway. We're looking at, we just talked about additional park improvements to Oyster Factory Park. We have completed some conceptual design and cost estimates for this Calhoun Street, which we'll get into in a little bit. And then we're looking at power line burial along Calhoun Street, which is, I believe, the next agenda item. So I'm going to escape out of this for a second and go through. Are y'all able to see this right now?
Yep. It's
Do you see a blue screen?
No, it's your link to concept presentation.
Okay.
You should need to click on that.
This is very difficult. Can you see that?
Yep, it's blue.
Okay. So here is our presentation for the Calhoun Street master plan. Obviously, we know where Old Town Bluffton is. The Calhoun Street corridor is highlighted here in pink, and you see how it interacts with all the neighboring amenities that we have, such as DuBose Park and Martin Family Park, the Wright Family Park towards the bottom of the screen, Oyster Factory Park to the west. Again, I talked about the Old Town Master Plan from 2006. It made some recommendations that I just briefly went over, such as better designs for the streets, pedestrian improvements, lighting, trees, walkability, items like that. I'm kind of rehashing some old things, but they talked about some on-street parking improvements, ADA crossings, drainage improvements, items such as that. So existing, here's just a couple of representative photos of the street as it is today. There's quite frankly, we don't have the pedestrian crossings that we need. We talked about that with the Bridge Street workshop a few months ago. There's some ADA upgrades that we need to do that we're looking at this fiscal year. Parking, drainage improvements, etc. So when we were looking at this master plan, we were looking at some ideas for some design inspiration. Obviously, we looked at Palmetto Bluff, Habersham up in Beaufort as examples of streetscapes that are near what we have with Calhoun Street. So one of the items that we were looking at is vehicular connectivity. We had looked at repaving the road. The pavement condition isn't the best. It needs resurfacing. One item that we want to discuss with y'all is a potential for a brick paving area or festival plaza, if you will, for, let's say, the farmer's market. When we shut down that area, do we want a different type of material on that road, or do we want to stay with asphalt for the whole roadway? Parking areas, we're recommending some pervious concrete pavers and incorporate that into our drainage design. We're actually have talked to DHEC. I think we have a good chance of getting a grant for some drainage upgrades if we do kind of like that low impact development and incorporate that with our project. So just looking at the available parking in the area, I know parking is a hot topic, but if we upgrade and delineate the parking and count all the parking that we've installed in and along the project area, we're looking at 285 potential available parking spaces. So that's quite an improvement, I believe, over the past few years. Some other ideas that we're considering would be public art within the crosswalks, high visibility crosswalks. Do we want shared mailbox kiosks? This brick and event festival plaza, add more bollards, looking at 6-foot tabby concrete sidewalks on the side of the road, items such as that. I'm going to skip this for now, but this is the next topic. It'll be the underground burial, and we'll get to that with the next agenda item. And again, we want to add plantings, whether that's bulb outs for traffic calming or rain gardens along the road. Both of those were called out in that old town master plan. This is kind of the typical section. This is where you kind of get a closer look at what we're recommending and what we want to talk about. This is one typical streetscape section where you have the 21-foot wide roadway, you have pervious pavers for the parking spots, pave the driveway aprons for existing driveway locations. We want a flush tabby concrete sidewalk, add these planter areas, add some beautification on the road, singular stripe down the middle. As you get in, here we go for an existing condition. You see there's no crosswalk on either of these three corners. We do have pedestrian connectivity. This sidewalk terminates. There's no connection to the crosswalk here. There's no ADA access. We have the overhead power lines that we'll talk about as the next agenda item. And so this was kind of a proposed streetscape. Do we want this kind of funky art crosswalk? Do we want to have these planters on the corners, slight furnishings, bike parking, I guess, off the street? Right now, I don't know how many times we've had to replace the bike spot that's there on Calhoun where people don't see it and they back into it because it's kind of in the parking aisle, not off on a sidewalk or off in an area that's protected. Again, adding more street canopy trees. I want to skip over this. Just typical site features that we're looking at. Do we want to planters, benches, bike racks? This is all stuff that we can talk about as we progress. We don't have to get into it now, but adding street lighting, we'll probably have to replace those light poles that we have now. They aren't serviced anymore. So if one of those breaks or is damaged, we don't have a means of replacing it. We've had one that was broken and we had to steal it kind of from another area and retrofit it in. They just don't make those fixtures anymore. So do we want to look at upgrading those lights? And mailbox clusters, we want lighted bollards to help with safety in that area. Again, I'm kind of going through real quick. I kind of want to get your all's feedback. What do you think of what we have right now? Do you like this streetscape? Do you like these ideas? Are we totally off what you're thinking? Like to hear what you say. I can go back and show you some other slides if you want, but that's kind of what we're looking for tonight.
Well, I have no comments. So I'm going to tell you are amazingly creative and I love the talent you bring to the table. So I think great job. So everyone else can chime in. Anybody else?
I think it's a great job as well, Mayor.
Fred?
Yeah, I was going to say that I think, Brian, it's beautifully designed. I love the trees with the street canopies and having those funky little art crosswalks. I think would be a nice feature in what we build as our art districts. I think you've done a great job with all of it.
Larry, Fred?
Yeah, can you show me again where the benches could go? Okay, that's good. You got the benches where the canopy would be good. Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
All right. Yeah, it looks good to me. You think you could have it done by next year?
wait till the next agenda item and you'll see why there might be a delay.
Fred, did you get it to the slide you wanted to see?
Yeah, he did a good job. The benches are near the trees. Having benches out in the wide, with no shelter is tough.
Yeah. Only one thing, Brian, since you're so in tune with all of this, and put it as a note. When I moved here, I know we had my supper club had a scavenger hunt, and one of the items was finding the center of town. And there was, before we paved it years ago, right in front of the store, and I bet Babby can show you where, there was something placed in the middle of the road, and that was the center of our original square mile. I would love to see that incorporated somehow.
Right. We have talked about that, and I know I think Bree Giroux was going to help me look into that and try to find that. And I know when we mill that area, we were going to be careful, and if we can't find it, maybe we can recreate where it is and kind of monumentalize that.
I may have pictures, but I would guarantee Babby or Bree know. But
Okay.
I'll see if I can find some pictures. Great.
What are y'all's opinions on the event plaza? I don't have a sketch of it, but would you want something between, I believe it would be Lawrence Street and Church, yeah, that's a little different. That's whether it's brick paving or I don't think cobblestone is the, we don't anything like that. But would you want a different texture there for when we would have events or close down that road?
Would the purpose or benefit of it only be for the farmers market? Because when you have other events, they extend longer than just that section.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's just for the farmers market, but it's just a change, I guess. It's just it's just more of an event area. But that's just one of the other questions I can think of off the top of my head. And I'm not sure if Mark has any additional comments he would like to get from you all.
No, if I could add, first and foremost, I'm shocked Brian absorbed and allowed all the compliments coming his way, knowing Brian. I think Brian's brilliant and he's put a great team around him, especially with Pat Rooney and his team. So yeah, I think that's one of our biggest questions. One, do you like the art crosswalks versus the standard?
Back in.
And I also would like to know if the different texture of event space, years past, we really liked Calhoun Street to block it off.
Like it's tree. Am I on mute?
Yes, you're okay. Well, maybe you're not.
Somebody's talking. I don't know who is not on mute, but mute yourself. Mark, I think they all liked everything. I don't.
Leave the meeting and go back in?
Is there somebody?
Terry,
Mr. Fingers putting it on
Okay.
mute, I believe.
Mark, I think I heard
Yeah.
guys, I think we liked his plan and he had asked about the brick event thing. The cobblestone doesn't work. I think we can walk down Dispensary and see that. So why don't you put it all and see what it all costs?
Done. Thank you for your feedback and a special thank you to Brian and Pat Rooney.
Yeah, and our consultants, MKSK, did a good job too. They're great. Any other
Executive
questions?
Council? I think we're good unless there's anyone else. Get on to Dominion and we can jump back if there's a question.
Okay.
Yeah, but the rest of them are fine.
All right. Are you all able to see that?
Yes.
mhm.
All right, so again, like we've done for the past other projects, just quick background. The town and SCE&G, which is now Dominion, they had a settlement agreement in 2014. Some of the conditions, not to go through all that right now, but some of the conditions of the agreement was that Dominion would pay for the cost of the burial of the main transmission lines along Calhoun Street and surrounding areas. The town would be responsible for acquiring the easements required for that project, and the town would have to pay for the cost associated with the secondary service lines to structures along the project area. Dominion would take care of the removal of the overhead power lines and the poles after everything was converted. There weren't any streetlight upgrades included in this settlement agreement, and there's no language in there about whether it's a phased or all at once project. I think Dominion would prefer that it's done all at once, but there's no language that really talks about that. So just keep that in mind as we progress forward, because it's pretty complicated. This, hopefully this shows up well. This red line kind of shows the project area as determined by Dominion. All these properties would be affected by this overhead underground conversion, because it's not as simple as just taking the overhead lines down on Calhoun Street. They have to have upgrades or gear switches and transformers throughout the area to make it all work. And this spaghetti map kind of shows you what I'm talking about. All these little areas where you see the pink squares, all those would be transformers that they would have to install in order to bury the project, and it would all feed into it. Like the loop that they showed, I can't even get into it. I'm not an electrical engineer, but it's really complex in my opinion. So they would have to do all of this at once, basically, in order to make this project work. It would involve putting in pretty large switchgear boxes. You can see these in purple at the corner of Lawrence and Boundary. I think that's Maiden and Boundary. Up here at the corner of May River Road and Calhoun Street. These are pretty large. They're 108 by 102, which is basically 9.5 by 8.5 feet. All these pink transformers are about 3 feet by 3.5 feet. You see those all through Calhoun Street. You have these even larger transformers. These are the 3-phase transformers. They're in green. There'd be one at the end of the run down here. One by, it looks like that might be behind the Methodist Church. One along Boundary, and one near Nickel Pumpers. And then you'd have all these secondary enclosures throughout as they tie into the services. So the yellow line would be the 15-foot underground easement that's required. And we think we can accomplish this with the streetscape project by running it in the Calhoun Street right of way instead of within private property. And so as we progress with the, say we already own Lawrence Street and we've taken ownership of this portion of Green Street. As we move forward with some of the road acquisitions, we think we can accommodate a lot of this. We have it identified as private easements. We think we can accomplish that within the right of way of those roads, and we wouldn't have to get easements. But everywhere it's pink, it's showing properties that we would have to get easements from in order to accomplish this project. And that would be at the town's, it would be at our expense and at our time to get that done. So it's pretty significant. I think we're looking at over 80 easements required for this. Again, visually, you would have those transformers and those switch gear boxes. Perhaps there's some landscaping that we could put near it, but you still need some clear zone. I believe they need like 10 feet in front of each one of those in order to access it. I think that will be an issue for just from an aesthetic standpoint, that I wanted you all to consider tonight. And then there's the budget of it. We have to budget to get these easements. We have to budget to do the secondary connections into the private establishments. So we have to budget for this in the upcoming fiscal years and work with Dominion in order to come up with those costs. We've had some preliminary estimates from them that I didn't want to share tonight, but we can get to that later on as we go, maybe in another workshop when we solidify this a little bit more. To go back to this, I know there's a lot going on here, and again, I'm not an electrical engineer. I will try my best to answer your questions, but I just wanted to get your all's feedback tonight. Is this still something we want to move forward with as we progress with the Calhoun Street streetscape? Because that's going to be a big component of the project.
I'll jump in. We have a lawsuit that has a lot of money attached to it that we're gonna use and have them do. I'm surprised they're making us do so much because that was a hefty settlement. So I'd love to see what all that, I mean, maybe Terry needs to meet with all of us and speak to that before we decide to say no to this.
Yeah, so they have told us that the cost to bury everything and to install the switch gears and the transformers, it will be just under that settlement agreement. So they can do all of this for the amount that they're required to pay. But again, the settlement says that the town has to go get the easements and pay for the easements. The town has to go and pay for the service from the main to the residents or to the commercial building. So those are just costs that we'll have to incur and budget for.
Mayor, can I jump in?
Mm-hmm.
I looked at this some time ago with Brian and Mark, and you know, we either use it or lose it. The only thing that you can get from them is if you put these facilities in and have them remove the overhead. If you don't do that, you don't get anything, was my understanding. The other part was when we physically went out and walked the terrain, we saw that, and Brian helped me because I don't remember the numbers, but I think the majority of the laterals were already underground.
We've talked to him about that. I might have to get with you offline. There's some talks that we've had with Dominion after you and I met that might impact that. There is some underground, but there's quite a bit that would have to be converted.
But you haven't provided us those numbers.
No, because we are still waiting. We're still working with Dominion to get that. But basically they're gonna, you know, we had talked about, can we use the existing overhead service line into residences? That they will not let us do that. Everything has to be converted to underground.
Why is that?
The way the agreement reads, and I can share that with you offline, but the agreement basically says they have to do that. We have to do that.
I think we should challenge him on that. That's ridiculous. They don't do that everywhere.
I agree. And then that was the one question I asked when Dominion took over SE&G is they need to know we still have this. And I didn't know it was that dictated to one street. I thought it was a settlement of services for a certain amount. So maybe this is a Brian, Terry, and anyone wants to sit with before. I don't know. I would like.
Let me say, and this is why I met with Brian and Mark. I have done a lot of this. I did this on Hilton Head, and I know what they can do and I know what they can't do.
Well, I agree. I think we need to push back a lot, but your background is in it. Maybe you.
Well,
What does the rest of staff council, do you want an update a little bit more one-on-one with Brian on this or Terry? What is it that you're going to do tonight if we don't do anything? I mean, I don't know is this more for information or what?
Mayor, I can jump in. I asked that we put this on the agenda because it's been so long, and I would say the Dominion Energy Agreement has come up several times, and most recently at the strategic plan workshop we had in January. So I know that Brian's been making a lot of progress, and definitely thank you to Councilman Wood for his time and knowledge as we're trying to implement and execute the settlement agreements, if you will. I think tonight, one thing we wanted to do was update you. Terry and I and Brian and have looked at the settlement agreement a whole bunch and compared some notes with Dominion. We hear you loud and clear on where you're asking to challenge. I think the next step is to continue along the lines with Dominion, knowing that we need to put this plan in place this fiscal year and price it to truly understand any additional cost above and beyond to the town, but also to challenge Dominion perhaps on some of those lateral issues that Brian raised that you expressed some interest in. So tonight, FYI, but I think it's a good update and a good reminder that we are going to do this work. It's based upon an agreement that's in place for a while with STE&G and transferred to Dominion. And I think I have to compare some notes with Terry and Brian and meet with Dominion sooner than later.
Right. A council okay with that?
Yeah, man, I would like to have a meeting with Brian just to be brought up to speed on what was discussed.
Good.
Okay.
And that's why I brought it up at strategic plan, because you had just won and I didn't think we had really discussed this much because it was just on a calendar. So maybe Terry, Brian, and you or Mark or somebody. Okay.
Mayor, this is Terry. I'll be happy to sit with Mark and Brian. The agreement was back in, I think it was 2015, maybe. Let me hold on a second. 2014. 2014. Happy to look at it and get with Mark.
Okay, and offer to sit with anyone on council as well.
Correct.
Would be great. Okay, everybody, is there anyone against any of that? Okay, next is Hope Carriage House.
All right. All right. So the Square Pope Carriage House was on the parcel of land that we bought, which is now at the Wright Family Park. The town bought that in 2017 as a circa 1850 house. There's a picture of the front elevation as if you're looking from the river inland. Back in 2019, we conducted a public opinion survey to determine the uses for the house. The top two choices were a museum visitor center and then a space for small functions. Those are identified in the purple and the green there. With that, we contracted with Metters to do a structural and historic assessment of the carriage house and to prepare a preservation plan. They prepared the preservation plan with input from a stakeholder group, and that plan was adopted by council in November of 2019. And I believe it included the recommendations from that survey. They provided a series of prioritized items based on the immediate needs of the house, and I can get into that if you want, but for time's sake, I'm going to kind of skip ahead and just show you where we're headed. Basically, we need to preserve, or the philosophy behind this is to preserve as much of the existing materials as we can, similar to the Garvin Garvey house. The structure will require some disassembly and elevation of the foundation. It's sinking pretty bad on the western end, I believe, of the property, but they want to raise it and leave it in the original location. The hyphen, which is the connector between the original house and then the addition, and the second floor porch, they need to be disassembled and either reinstalled or perhaps not even reinstall the infill of the bathroom, just due to the deteriorated condition of the site. The floors need to be reinforced and upgraded to accommodate any public use and to meet any current codes that we might have. We also need to sprinkle and condition the building. So the first floor, what we're talking with Metters about as they proceed with their construction drawings is to design the first floor for public access, either as a welcome center, visitor center, or museum type use. We can provide ADA access to the first floor only. There wouldn't be ADA access to the second floor. We could provide accessible restrooms at the recently renovated garage, which is very close to being done. The Wright Family Park, if you want an update, we should be substantially complete with that project by the end of August. So these all kind of tie together. They're components of one another, if you will. We're proposing that the existing kitchen function as a break room, and that the adjacent bathroom is basically just for staff in order to achieve code compliance. We're recommending that the first floor porch serve as a seating area with view to the Wright Family Park and to the proposed gardens that we're going to construct. The first floor could house historic exhibits or artifacts. If you aren't aware, we did some recent archaeological diggings and found I don't have anything here on this slide or on this presentation, but we found artifacts. The Hayward folks from the Hayward House, they were out there, and we have those housed at Town Hall right now. Some pretty cool stuff. They uncovered some of the old piers of the original house. We've since covered them back up, but we've mapped them, and we're going to try to show some exhibits of that with this project. So we're thinking for the second floor, design that for town staff use only, though we could prepare it for future small event space or event preparation. We can't accomplish ADA, like I said. The existing bathrooms in really bad shape and would need to be retrofitted. We want you to consider tonight removing the one porch bedroom in order to reestablish the original configuration of the house, and I'll show you a floor plan here in a second. Again, remove that remove that bedroom and take the screens down that are on the existing porches in order to create a better connection with the park. I can show you some pictures and we can walk through that. There's a chimney on the Water Street side of the building that is actually falling away from the house. It's not an original part of the building, and we're asking consideration to take that away as it's literally separating from the building. This is kind of a proposed elevation of what we're looking at. Like I said, on that second floor, remove those screens or remove those enclosures on the bottom side. Repair the roof, repair the foundation, raise it off the ground, kind of restore it, bring it back. We have ADA access over here on the west side of the building. So tonight, I just wanted to get y'all's input on it. What do you think of what we talked about? Either the uses or the alterations to it. You know, removing the bedroom that bedroom is in this corner right here. it's kind of screened in. I can go back to that first slide that shows the picture. You know, you think of removing the screens, removing the brick chimney. Are there any other design inputs that you'd like to give our consultant as we go through the construction drawing phase of the project?
I have a question, Brian. I saw in the agenda that one of the proposed uses was for wedding preparations, or I guess bridal uses. What's the proposed idea behind that? Would it be a room designated for like a bride and a bridal party? Would it be one also designated for a groom and his party?
Yeah, I'm not sure how that's going to work yet. It was just one of the things that came up as we discussed what could it be used for, those second floor rooms, you know, whether it's maybe it's offices, maybe it is just a room that you could prepare. You know, I think this is going to be a pretty popular spot to rent and have weddings. So those brides and grooms, they're going to need a spot to prepare before that. So I think that was the idea behind that. But how that's all been thought out yet, we're not there yet.
And it's only limited to someone having a ceremony, and it would not be open for someone to use the space for a reception.
Correct.
Well, or without alcohol, right?
I don't think the building would accommodate, the building wouldn't, as planned, wouldn't accommodate a reception, but the park could accommodate a reception without alcohol.
Gotcha. Great work. I'm happy with it. I think we've got to look more on use later as we get closer to getting ready to start this. And I know we need funding, private and public. Anyone else? Great. Thank you, Brian.
All right.
Okay. Last item is, I lost where I was. The CIP funding sources.
All right, so this is Chris Forster. I will be taking over for Brian. Let's see if I can get this work. There we go. Okay, so in your packets, you received a list of all of our major funding sources, a description of them, as well as the legal citation and what those revenue sources could be used for. Tonight, we are all focusing on the CIP revenue sources. So here's an overview of the revenue sources that I will briefly review with you. I'm going to try and keep myself to 10 minutes because we've had a couple long meetings recently, but feel free to stop me if you have any questions, or if you think of anything after the meeting, you can always reach out to me then as well. So of course, as part of the budget process, the town council can always include a general fund transfer over to CIP for approved capital projects. What you see here is just the recent history. Of course, most of this is related to the renovation we did with Town Hall, but there's also a little bit for LEC in here, as well as the transfer of affordable housing dollars over to CIP. The next interfund transfer we'll discuss is Stormwater Utility Fund. We recently increased the per equivalent single family unit to $115. Again, as part of the budget process, amounts can be transferred from the SU fund to CIP to support projects that have a stormwater or sewer component to them. So if you're doing road work and you're going to improve the infrastructure for stormwater or sewer, the applicable amounts can be transferred over to cover those particular costs of the project. The next interfund transfer is from debt service, and within debt service is our tax increment financing dollars. So the TIF funding is taxes on real property of the incremental growth of the TIF district. This supports the TIF debt service, but also excess revenue can support capital projects as long as they are benefiting the TIF district. And just for information, the base of the TIF district when it was established was an assessed value of total assessed value of 16 million. Currently within that TIF district, there's a total assessed value of approximately 145 million. 50% of that will go to the general fund as property tax, and the other 50% can cover debt service as well as transfers for capital projects. Next, we have our assessment district, the municipal improvement district fees, or MID fees. And these are $75 on lots within the assessment district in the Jones Estates, New Riverside, and portions of Buckwalter. It's collected within the debt service fund. What I have here is just the revenue amount that we collected. While they technically could be used for capital projects, it has been the policy of the council in the past to accumulate these funds to pay down the debt service. So we have not used it for CIP in the past specifically, but it is something that is available to us. Similar with the state accommodations, this is a 2% tax on proceeds from accommodations rentals. It is remitted to us from the state quarterly. Town receives the first $25,000 and then 5% of the remaining revenues after that. They can be used for tourism-related projects. Again, we have not used state accommodation taxes for capital projects. We've primarily only used our local accommodations taxes, but within the allowed use, it does allow for tourism-related projects and infrastructure. Here is the local accommodations tax, which is 3% imposed by the town on gross proceeds from rental accommodations. Traditionally, what we have here is 51% of transfer to CIP fund for capital projects, and again, has to be tourism related. If you look in the history, prior to 2015, it was only transferred on a project by project basis. 2015 to 17, that percentage was 38%, and then we increased that percentage to 51% in 2018. We have hospitality taxes, 2% fee on gross sales of prepared meals and beverages, and again, it's collected monthly. This supports the general fund, as well as can be transferred for CIP projects for tourism-related projects and infrastructure. Traditionally, the general fund has received $500,000 of those revenues. Again, that is just a long-standing practice, not necessarily written in stone anywhere. The boat ramp fees, this is a $25 per dwelling unit fee charge when the building permit is obtained for lots in the Bluffton Village, Jones Estate, Schultz Tract, New Riverside, Palmetto Bluff, and the Village at Verdier developments. Again, this can be for boat ramp facilities. We have our state proviso funds. These are one-time appropriations of state funds. They are identified as part of the state budget appropriation process and are typically tied specifically to certain projects. This is a history of what we received in recent years. And in FY21 for this fiscal year, we currently have $729,000 in carryover budgeted for projects. Grants, we have been pretty aggressive with Brian's team as well as my grant organizer, Felicia Roth, at seeking out grants for various projects. Again, they're state, federal grants, and these are, most of them are on reimbursement basis. In other words, we incur the costs and then we submit those costs for reimbursement to the granting agency, and they just make sure that they satisfy the grant requirements. And there's a history of that. Currently budgeted about $1 million in grants for this coming fiscal year. The municipal improvement development fees, MIDF, this is $900 per dwelling unit in Jones Estate, New Riverside, and Buckwalter tracts paid at the time of building permit or sale of lot. For CIP projects for parks, open space, and stormwater infrastructure. And another important revenue source is our multi-county industrial park revenue, MCIP. This is fee in lieu of taxes, and it's based on the ad valorem, what would have been the ad valorem tax on the parcels within the Buckwalter multi-county industrial park. The use of these funds must be designated for projects within the Buckwalter MCIP. What we see here is a tracking of the earned revenues over the years. And to the column out to the right is what we have spent from MCIP funds over the years. I just want to point out that this does not capture all of the investment the town has put into the Buckwalter development. This is just what we've used MCIP for. Utility tax credits are agreements with Hargray and Palmetto Electric to provide state tax credit dollars to the town. And this is for clearing sites and construction of building pads within the Buckwalter MCIP. In FY20, we received $159,000 from Hargray and $285,000 from Palmetto Electric. Projects must substantially be complete by the end of this calendar year. Buckwalter Park funds, these town revenues from the transfer of land as part of the Buckwalter Tract and is for the design and construction of the Buckwalter Park. So in 2012, we received $670,000 approximately from that transfer. The town has spent $156,000 through FY20, additional almost $100,000 budgeted in FY21. So again, that's a very quick overview of the CIP related revenue sources. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thorough job, Chris. Any questions of council on this? Maybe we'll have some after we absorb the added that you put on today, but that's great information.
Sure.
Anything from council on Chris on this item? Okay, if not, is there, and thank you all for all of your work. I know I can speak on behalf of all of council, the respect we have for all of your talents. It just continues, just is amazingly amazing. So if there is not anything else, is there a motion to go into executive session for contractual matters pertaining to Marshall Horton Esquire for services as Town of Bluffton Municipal Judge? That's FOIA 3470A2.
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there a second? I'll
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. We are in executive session. Thank you, everyone.